Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to share with you from the top-down perspective from Sweden. I work at the Swedish Food Agency, where I'm a food waste expert, and I've been leading this work since 2018. So it's 7 years for now. And I will start showing you how we work in Sweden, what authorities that are working together, and what kind of ministries that are giving giving us this assignment. And I will also tell you a bit about the consumer actions and also about public meals. And I won't go in so much into data because I know the next speaker will talk about the Swedish data. So I will only talk about the figures when it comes to the consumer's food waste, because that's very close to me. Here you can see how the work is built up in Sweden. We have an ongoing government commission from 2 ministries. It's the Ministry of Rural Affairs and Infrastructure, and it's the Ministry of Climate and Enterprise. And we are 3 authorities working together. I come from the one to the left, the Swedish Food Agency, and we have, of course, the food legislation at our job, and we also have the consumer food waste, you can say, very simple. We have the Swedish Board of Agricultural, which comes from the same ministry as my agency, and they work with food losses. And we also have the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, which works with the national food waste data. And of course, they work with all waste data, but today we will talk about the food waste data. We are in an ongoing government commission. You can see the years further down. We've been working with or against food waste since 2013. And we're in the last year in a 6-year-long government commission, and we'll already know that we will have a new government commission 5-year-long from 2026 to 2030. I have to start with a definition. In Sweden, we have a separate word for the edible parts of food waste. So when we talk about food waste in Sweden, we actually have another word for it. And in Swedish, it's matsvinn. So when we talk about reducing food waste, it's always about reducing edible food waste. So that's very, very important for us when we talk about food waste, because the waste directive and the binding targets, it's about the total food waste. And we know the only thing we can actually reduce is the edible food waste. So it has to be clear in the room that when I talk about food waste, it is edible food waste from now on. We have recently updated a national action plan in Sweden, and we have 4 key areas. It's about goals and follow-up methods. It's about activities and collaboration between the actors in the food supply chain, changing consumer behavior, of course. Most of the food waste occurs at the households, and increased knowledge, research, and innovation. So this was presented for the government in February this year, but as you all know, we have new binding targets from the EU, so we will have to update this national action plan again next year, so it will meet requirements from the EU. So there will be another round and there will be another update, and maybe we will talk more about that further on. But what we do know that we have to engage the food business operators even more. So for Sweden, that will be very, very important to talk to all the actors in the food supply chain, because that is where the food waste occurs. It's not at the agencies. So we have to have a close cooperation with the food supply chain. I will now go on to the consumer food waste to give you the view of how does it look like in Sweden. We know that every year, every Swede wastes 16 kilos of edible food in the waste bin. And we also waste 18 kilos down the drain. So in total, it's 34 kilos. And you can see to the right, it's not decreasing as we'd wish. We would like the food waste to halve before 2030. So in 2018, it was 19 kilos per person in the waste bin. And the newest figure is from 2023, it's 16 kilos. So we are doing a lot of work, but it's decreasing too slowly. We also have a cost for the food waste. It's 140 euros per person a year on average. So it's loads of money that are thrown away down the waste bin. You all know that already. We also have quite a good idea what is actually being thrown away, because we do waste composition picking analysis when we separate the waste and we see what kind of food is actually thrown away. So if we go into the bin and you see that the fruit and vegetables is the biggest part to be thrown away. So no, again, I'm talking about edible food waste, not anything else. The second place is bread and bread products, and then we have leftovers. So when I communicate and when we communicate about decreasing food waste and tackling food waste, we often talk about fruit and vegetables, bread, and leftovers, because we know that is where we can do the biggest difference if we educate and learn and talk about this. If you look to the right, we have what kind of food that is thrown away down the drain. So of course it's liquid. It's coffee and tea that is the biggest part, and that contains of lots of water. We know that. It's also dairy products like milk and yogurts, and other drinks like soft drinks, and we have sauce and soups and so on. So this we know in Sweden. So that is very good for us to know that, so that we can communicate on the right levels when we talk about to the households. We do consumer surveys every other year to look into what they know about food waste, how to take care of food, what the date mark means, and so on. And we've done this for three times, and we will do it soon again. And we can see very clearly that the knowledge about among the consumers in Sweden has increased. So the knowledge has increased, but as you saw, the figures, they don't show as big decrease as we should wish for in Sweden. We have 3 topics that is most important for us to reducing the food waste. It's about understanding date marking and best before dates, and that you can use your senses to look, smell, and taste to decide whether you can eat the food or not. And we don't have to go so deeply into this picture, but you can see that they are going up, and that means for all the products that we are asking question about, how do you decide if you can eat the food, more and more people are actually using their senses. And knowing that, we know that they have more knowledge, and they should be able to lower their food waste even more in the households if they use their knowledge, if they use their senses more. And I hope this will continue going up in the next questionnaire. Another important question is about leftovers. We know Swedes throw away lots of leftovers. So the important question is, how long can you eat leftovers if you have it in the refrigerator? And as you can see, when we asked this question in the beginning, only 35% answered that they can eat up to a week. But you can see that it has gone up. Around 43% now think they can eat leftovers up to a week. And the recommendation from my authority, where I work, the Food Safety Authority in Sweden, we say that if you have 4 degrees in the refrigerator, you can actually eat the leftovers for up to a week. So this is a very important education that we work with when we communicate, because if we can have people to know this even more, we know that they can take care of the leftovers even better instead of throwing it away. So this is very, very important, and we will continue talking about this further on. And we also have the temperature in the refrigerator. So we communicate, lower the temperature, put it on 4 degrees, the food will last longer, you have longer time to eat the food, to cook the food, and so on. But still only around 40% of the Swedes say or think they have between 3 to 5 degrees. So we will continue communicating, lower the temperature in the refrigerator. And I hope you will do that too in Romania. So this is very important for us, and we will continue doing that. So the Swedish Food Agency, the strategy from us is to inform about the consequences on food waste. Of course, we have to increase the consumer knowledge. We have to create conditions for consumers to reduce their edible food waste. And for this, we need the retailers, we need the food industry. We have to come together to educate the consumers and give them the right opportunities to buy enough food, not too much food, and so on. And we will continue taking the lead and engage more actors within the consumer food waste segment. So this was the consumer food waste. I will also tell you a little about what we do towards the public meals. You know, in Sweden, we serve free school meals every day around the year when they go to school. And we have preschools, elderly care, and hospitals too, of course. So these are all public meals that are tax financed. We have a national measuring method for the public meals, so they know that they measure the same way. And we also, every other year, actually map the food waste. And it's voluntary, but around 170 out of 290 municipalities actually give us their data. And we are very happy about that. I guess maybe Mattias will tell you a little bit more about that. So we also have a handbook, as you see here, with measures how to lower your food waste. And there are different kinds of measures that you need to do if you're in the kitchen, when we talk about the kitchen waste, or if you're in the serving, about the buffet, the serving waste, and you have the plate waste. And mostly the serving waste is actually the highest waste when it comes to schools. It's mostly higher than the plate waste. So we're not to blame the guests. We are to take responsibility together to lower the food waste within public meals. My time is running out. I will like to show you what's the cause of food waste when it comes to schools in Sweden. And you have to bear this in mind when you talk about tackling food waste. When we see that food are thrown away within elderly care, schools, and so on, we know that too little food is eaten. So the food is cooked and served to be eaten. So when it's thrown away, they eat too little food. So when a pupil eats too little food, they will be hungry later on during the day. And they will think about another food or want to get some food. And that will end up with tired pupils, mess in the classroom, difficult to learn. And the next consequence is, of course, poor school performance. So when we in Sweden tackle food waste within public meals, it is about to find measures so that the guests will eat more food. It is not about to produce less food. So in the beginning, of course, we have to lower the production to meet meet how much they eat, but you have to work with the food environment, with how it be nice to be in the restaurant, lower the noise and so on. You have to have more adults around the pupils so that it will be nice to eat the food. So you have to bear this in mind when you tackle food waste in public meals. When it comes to private meals or private restaurants, it might be the other way around. Maybe we will hear later on about that. This is my last slide. I have, of course, loads to tell you about, so maybe there'll be another opportunity to tell more about the Swedish work from the authorities in Sweden.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I will talk shortly about the collection of food waste statistics in Sweden, which I know is a challenge in very many countries. But obviously this is, a very brief presentation. There are plenty more details and you're most welcome to ask later on. But I'll start with a little bit of background to this. So that you know, so to say, the context in which we quantify food waste. The Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, they are responsible for data collection, so to say, not just food waste, but all kind of waste statistics. So they are the reporting agency. They report the statistics to the Eurostat, and they also commission this work to consultancies. And I work for a consortium for environmental monitoring in Sweden, together with Statistics Sweden, the Swedish Environmental Institute, me at the Swedish University of Agricultural Science and the Meteorological and Hydrological Institute. And we do all kind of statistical work, not just with waste, but also with water, air, and climate. So this is a big consortium working with a lot of different tasks. And food waste is, so to say, a subcategory to the waste statistics collection. So this is a fairly stable organization. We worked with this for the last 15 years in not exactly the same people, but with the same organizations to create stability. The cost for this statistical collection is in the range of 50 to 100,000 euros per year. That is what Sweden more or less invests in this. And additional to this, there comes, of course, also cost for development projects where we try to develop a new statistical method, new data collection procedures, and so on. But just to give you an indication on how much money we invest in this kind of data collection. Obviously, we're also dependent on other agencies for a lot of the data collection. And overall, we have approximately 102 kilograms per capita in Sweden. This is mostly from households and then from the other parts, especially industry, to some extent primary production, food services, and retail. And obviously, this is very big categories. So if you take, for example, food services, this contains like restaurants, primary schools, preschools, elderly care, hotels, hospitals, secondary schools, and prisons. Prisons was so small, so I had to put the name outside the bar. But just to give you an idea of like how we actually collect the data. So we're not just collecting data for food services as a whole, but we collect them for every separate entity within the food service sector, which makes it slightly more complicated. And I will try to dig into more of the details. Also comment on this 122 kilograms per capita. This includes also the inedible food, of course, like all food waste, which is what we report to Eurostat. So the actual data collection, if we start from the beginning of the food supply chain in the primary production, is actually the simplest stage. Because here we only collect the food waste from the waste treatment facilities, the biogas plants that treat this waste. So we contact them and ask for how many kilos of food waste from agricultural sector they have treated the last year. And if we don't get an answer, we try to look in their environmental reports in order to find out how much food waste they have treated. We don't do any kind of upscaling of this, but we see like the amount we get from these entities we use as, so to say, the number for primary production. So this is a quite simple way of collecting the food waste statistics. This obviously doesn't include any losses or anything like this. There are a huge amount of losses that are still left in the farms or treated at the farms, but that is not included in the statistics. Then in the processing industry, we have, we call it one survey, but the surveys actually comes in slightly different shapes depending on where we aim it. So for the slaughterhouse industry, for example, there are slightly different questions than when we target the dairy industry, because it wouldn't make sense to ask the exact same question. So when we adopt the language a little bit. But for all industry sectors, we have this survey and we send it out to approximately 500 companies every second year it's been so far. And we get quite many answers from these companies. And then we try to figure out how much of this food waste that they're reporting. They're also answering on how or where this food waste ends up, if it goes to biogas or for animal feed. And then we try to sort out the answers in order to categorize this to what actually constitute food waste from all their side flows, byproducts, and waste. And with this, we take the mass of waste per employee and we count it up depending on how many employees we have in each sector of the food industry in Sweden this specific years in order to end up with a national number of food waste from the processing industry. Moving on to retail. Here we get data, actually company data from the five biggest retailers in Sweden. They together have approximately 90% of the market, which means that there's a good coverage already from these 5 companies. It's a fairly big market domination by them. So they reported directly how much food waste they have in their companies. And this is fairly easy then to calculate up, depending on how many kilograms per Swedish crown of turnover, and then multiply that with the turnover of the whole sector in order to get the number. Then to also add the wholesale, we get data from additional 6 companies, and to some extent the companies already working in the retails. And this is big companies, they also work with wholesale to some extent in order to get a number. Here we don't have the frame of how many wholesalers there are, since it's a little bit less defined on what is a wholesaler. There can also be industry companies operating as wholesalers because they have their own warehouses. Then we also get data from 1 to 2 companies from the convenience sector. They have approximately 400 or 500 entities or shops in each country or in each company, where we get a number of how much mass of food waste we have per store that we can multiply with the number of stores in total in Sweden. And lastly, we also collect data from online shops, where we normally get data from around 2 companies. And also here we don't have, so to say, the total market for this, which means that we use these 2 companies as a proxy for all of Sweden. And then we sum this up together to get the number for retail and wholesale sector. Then, in the end of the food supply chain, it gets more complicated. For the food service sector, we first of all utilize the data that Karin was talking about before, the questionnaire they send out to all the 290 municipalities, and that is answered by 2/3 of them normally. This is data for preschools, primary schools, secondary schools, and care homes. And from this data, we can calculate the waste factor in grams per portion that is served. This we multiply with the number of enrolled persons every year. So the number of the number of kids in preschools, the number of pupils in primary and secondary schools, and the number of elderly that are living in care homes in specific years. And then, of course, we need to multiply this with the number of portions served a specific year. And this is, of course, depending on how many portions are served per day, where in a care home is normally 3 portions, while in primary and secondary school is 1 portion. And also how many days per year these schools or care homes are operating. So for a care home is obviously every day, 365 days per year, while in a school they're only open around 180 days per year. So a different number of days, which of course makes then a number of portions per year that is served. Then for prisons, we get data for 6 prisons, and here also we calculate the waste factor in grams per portions. Then we multiply this with the number of prisoners in Sweden a specific year and how many portions per year that is served in these prisons. Also here, the prison is not closed, so they are open all year round, and they serve 3 portions per day. From restaurants, we utilize data from weight-based waste fees that some municipalities in Sweden are using. So it's a fairly small number of restaurants we can use this for in a few specific municipalities. But there we get quite good data, so we can calculate the amount of food waste per employees in these specific restaurants. And this we can then multiply with the number of employees in the restaurant sector in Sweden in order to get the national number. And for hotels, we do something similar, but here we get data from approximately 1 or 2 hotel chains, which operates around 100 hotels, in order to get the mass of waste per overnight guest. I mean, how many people are sleeping over in the hotel? And then we can multiply this with the national number of hotel guest nights that are produced a single year. And lastly, we also have the hospitals. And here the different regions, there are 21 regions in Sweden, they collect the statistics from their separate waste collection. So how much waste they are sorted out. So it's not the residual waste, but only sorted out food waste from these 21 regions that are aggregated into one number. And then we use this number as the total for hospital food waste in Sweden. That was food service. And then lastly, we have households, which is, of course, the biggest part. And here we are depending a lot on data from waste management companies. Every municipality, more or less, owns a waste management company that takes care of the waste in the single municipalities. And some municipalities are collaborating around this service. And they have a trade organization that collects statistics from all these different companies. And then we utilize this data that is collected by this trade organization. So from this data, we get the amount of organic waste that are sorted out and reported. We then multiply this with the factor of how much of this is food waste and how much is like napkins and other things, flowers and things that are ending up in the organic waste but are not food waste. We also apply a factor for how much of this is actually household waste, since some of the organic waste that is collected can come from restaurants also. Because restaurants are, of course, or the waste from restaurants are, of course, picked up with the same garbage trucks as from the households. So we need a factor to distribute how much of this is from the households. We also have food waste in the residual waste because not all the food waste are separated. So in the residual waste, we also have a factor, how much of this is food waste and how much is other waste. Obviously, we want to have as little food waste as possible in the residual waste since it's supposed to be sorted out, but we still have some. And then we multiply this also with a factor for how much of this comes from households and how much comes from restaurants. And lastly, we also have reporting on how much food waste is home composted, because households can compost their food waste themselves. And then municipalities are reporting on how much this is in total. And all these three streams together then gives a result on how much household food waste we have in total. So that is basically how we collect data in Sweden. There are quite many different sources and quite many different methods that are combined into getting a total number. And these statistics is, of course, we collected for the sake of reporting to Eurostat, but we also have some national targets that we try to follow up on. We obviously committed to follow the SDG target on reducing food waste, but so to say, this is additional to this. So first of all, we have a target on biological waste treatment. That was the first target we had was that 40% should go to anaerobic digestion. And this was a target that was set until 2020, which Sweden managed to reach in 2020. Then we set a new target to 2023 that 75% of all food waste should go to anaerobic digestion. This target we are quite far from reaching, because in 2023 it was like 43% that went to anaerobic digestion treatment. The second target is on food waste reduction, where we sort of say on the way of reaching the SDG target, we set that the target for 2025 from 2020 should be 20% less food waste. And since we had approximately 122 or 121 kilos of food waste, 20% less is what we should have than 2025. So far, we have not really made significant improvement in order to achieve this goal. And you can also see the history here that it has gone a bit up and down previously. I will say that this is not really a reduction previously or an increase. This is mostly that we are becoming better and better on finding the food waste statistics. And the more we look, the more we find when it comes to food waste. But the last year it has been fairly stable, unfortunately not decreasing in the pace we would like it to be.
So I will share with you in a couple of minutes why food waste is important for IKEA, what we have done, and what is next. And then we will have a discussion, I will share afterwards. I have with me a couple of colleagues that they can also participate in the discussion if needed. So why it is important? When people talks about IKEA, probably they associate us with home furnishing and with our vision to create a better everyday life for the many people. What maybe surprising for many people is that we are also a food business. And we are a food business that welcomes over 600 million customers globally every year. 6 million of those within our 3 stores in Romania. So we knew that we have a huge responsibility and opportunity to make an impact with our reach. And that is where, whilst food waste is still a relatively small part of our footprint, we think it's a super important topic because of the emissions that food waste and loss generates every year. And as I said, we saw the opportunity with our size and reach, we could make an impact. And connected to what Karin and Mattias shared before, what we also knew is that the 60% of the food waste is produced in the household. We know that many of our customers are worried about the environment and the impact, but they don't know really what to do when it comes to food waste. So we started our journey putting together all the insights we have from an emissions point of view, from a project drawdown, that sharing that reducing food waste is the second most important and impactful topic that a household can take after shifting the diet to more plant-based food. A topic that we are also tackling, adapting our range and making our meals and our offer more accessible from a price perspective when it comes to plant-based food. So we took all of this and we started to work. And then, of course, in a year like 25 and 26, where we are focusing as a company in the year of cooking and eating, even more, we know that we can share our knowledge and our insights to make an impact and convince more people to join this amazing journey. But how we tackle and how we do it, let me just share a few words. We set up a systemic approach with 3 layers. We started with our own operations, and here we work in reducing the production food waste, the food waste that we produce in our 408 kitchens around the world. And then we now started to do pilots and testing what it means to reduce plate waste. We are measuring and we are gathering insights as we speak to see what else we can do in this field. We also working on the layer of customer engagement. And here we work together with other parts of the organization, with marketing, with sustainability, to really engage customers and support them in maximizing what they can do with their food. So when we talk about the cost that food waste have for companies like IKEA, of course, but in the household, and Karin shared some amazing numbers with us, we know that we can support this journey with the many customers globally throughout the world. But we didn't stop here. We also went and we wanted to start engaging stakeholders. And on this field, we just share and work with other businesses, with alliances, with policy makers, with governance in events like the one we are here together today, with an aim of creating progress and activate and move steadily towards the SDG targets. To stakeholders, we don't only operate through our IKEA retailing operation setup. We also use our investment within the circular investment portfolio, and we invest in proven solutions and in companies such as Winnow, Vanguard Renewables, and Reco in Korea, using this opportunity of being present in 30 markets worldwide. Slide, please. The journey, if we now I say it, now it's coming a little bit later into my computer. So the journey started back in 2012 when the company launched our sustainability strategy. It was called People and Planet Positive Strategy. By 2014, we decided from a company from the company end to Z that food waste will become a priority throughout. And then 1 year later, we partnered with one of these companies we invested with, Lourido, just to secure that we have the appropriate technology to start measuring what food waste meant in our organization. So we established an AI tool that helped us to measure what we put in the bins every day. And we did a pilot in 2 stores in the UK. And very, very early indicators in that pilot phase, back in 2015, showed that we could reduce 40% already of our the food waste in our operations. With those figures, from a company perspective, we decided to go bold and set our target to halve production food waste, aiming for the SDG 12.3 target. And with that, we started to amplify and go a little bit faster. So 1 year later, we installed the solution in 150 stores in 16 different countries. And this 40% reduction in 2 stores, all of the way, it became a huge and strong proof of concept. And we decided to go all in. We invested in Lourido, and in partnership with them, we co-developed a new solution called Lourido Vision. So we incorporated AI into the technology to help us to measure sorry? Oh, I heard some noise, sorry. And create reports about what we were producing, what we were wasting, that could be shared throughout our organization in the operation, very accountable and very proud that they could contribute not only with their daily job, but also to a bigger objective, which is tackling food waste. With that, we continue working, and one of our happy moments, I must say, is that in 2022, we achieved a reduction of 54% across all stores. So 8 years before the SDG target, we halved our food waste. How we got there, maybe we can highlight 4 points. But I will say that point number 1 and point number 4 are really, really interconnected. So we started with a top-down approach, but at the same time connected with a bottom-up approach. We don't believe that things need to come from the top to be sustainable. So the IKEA senior leadership put food waste on the sustainability agenda as an ongoing strategic target. This was not an one-off project. This was a topic that we thought we could contribute, and we will be here in our targets to stay. We created a clear map with clear goals and an ambition goal, but there was also a very achievable and a clear map where everybody could contribute and know what comes next. And we share this within the organization. And this is where we become to the third point, that we put together a dedicated project team to support with the ongoing rollout. The importance of having a dedicated project team, it comes because there are many things when we talk about this topic and in many other topics that they are really, really floating. There are things that change continuously. When we talk about training coworkers, when we talk about measuring KPIs, support, it's important that we have the experts there, that they can help the teams that they are in the operations to continue the journey. But then for me, probably, this is very personal, but share, if you come back to the other slide, just a second, please. Probably one of the most important topics for everybody is the frontline staff engagement. We have 11,000 co-workers working in the food business globally. Without them, this will dilute it and will never have an impact. They have real pride in what they do every day. We make them ambassadors. We measure and we celebrate with them every step of the way. And to see how engaged our co-workers are makes us extremely, extremely proud, because this is one of the success factors of where we are today. Next one, please. So we don't stop here. From 22, you could see in the other slide that we move in 2024 to 65%. So we didn't stop when we achieved the goal, but we still continue. We will continue on reducing the production food waste even further. There are always opportunities in what we do to do it a little bit better every day. As we share, we continue evaluating the pilots connected to the measurement of plate waste, and then let's see how we can contribute even further. From a customer perspective, we want to share our knowledge. We want to share our know-how to really make IKEA a destination for people to come and learn and share how they can make the most of the food they buy and they cook. And then thirdly, we are very welcoming the revised EU Waste Framework Directive with a 30% reduction goal and the transposition of to the directive into the member state law. Here, I would like to take the opportunity to highlight that there is a hope that early adopters ourselves, they can be credited for the achievements we already get into when establishing our baseline long before the directive was set up and working with an earlier baseline. So with this, we did a little bit of a summarized version just to open up for questions and inviting you for questions.